This is the Lekker Rugby Pod with Harry Jones and MV Welman.
It's the Lekker Rugby Pod, episode 16. And this week we're going to be taking a look at what the state of the nation is in terms of the Rugby Championship, having a look at what the different coaches have been up to while we rate them. And then we're going to have a chat about the Springbok selection, the squads, the names that have been left out, the names that have returned, and everything else. All the timestamps are on the screen here. You're welcome to jump ahead to it. And as usual, Harry is here to chat to me about it. How's it, Harry?
How's it, MV? I'm enjoying your channel. Your subscribers are interesting fellows. A lot of them are asking me, who are you? Where are you from? What do you do? You know, what size underpants you got? Guys, this is personal stuff. But anyway, I promise this episode I'm going to be a little more revelatory. I'll let you into the life of Harry, or at least, you know, one part of my brain.
The life of Harry. You know, there's a movie, The Life of Brian. Hopefully we're not going that way.
No, it's been a great week. The pressure is telling on some teams and not on others, don't you think? You know, I believe in the principle of esotericism. You cannot really just take what people say. You've got to actually put words in their mouth. The reason why is because people don't say what they mean. And so teams always say they love a coach up until the day they fire him. And people always say everything's great. And then boom, hi, Leon McDonald, goodbye. So you can go back in time and say, when we said Razor faced the most pressure, I think I said that, you could tell that probably took 2 weeks, that whole argument between old friends, because they're good friends.
Yeah, that's quite a surprise now. When I read it this morning, I couldn't believe it. An interesting thing, they wanted to live stream that news conference, and then New Zealand Rugby said, no, they're not going to live stream it. I wonder if they were doing a bit of damage limitation or damage fallout limitation. Tell us, what do you think happened there? I mean, these guys are, like you said, they're friends, have been around for a while. They've butted heads before, from what I understand. But Razor picked Leon to come help him. So what went wrong?
Razor's a guy who sharpens his mind by narrowing it, you know? So sometimes he just drills down into a truth that he believes is universal. I saw him going up the steps in Marseille at the train station before the World Cup, and he wasn't even supposed to be there. He wasn't part of any team. And I said, Razor, what are you doing? And he just kind of almost like he was hiding. He was carrying his own bags, even with his replaced knees. He's a guy who drills down into his own mind. He cut Leon McDonald, but he didn't replace him. What that means is that Razor is now the attack coach. What it means is Razor's staying up all night. What it means is Razor's either in over his head, which we're about to see, or he's the kind of guy who works his way out of a problem. And, you know, he's a winner. He has proven winning at club level. So now we're seeing if he can jump to the next level. How different is Test from club? That's what Razor is telling himself right now. How many Crusaders will he throw into the mix? I'm looking at his team getting more and more Crusadery. You're going back to what you know. Sometimes when we're in stress, what we do is we just kind of drill down into what we think we knew when we were young. And so you might be going back in time. And quite frankly, he might also be saying to Leo McDonald, I want someone to take the blame. It's unfortunate. I cannot speak to what the argument was, but Leo McDonald is known as a very nice guy who was a good player. He's the most ripped coach in world rugby. He's still really fit. He's friends with the players. Maybe he was too friendly, and maybe Razor is in a grumpy mood right now and wants someone to throw some chairs with him.
But Razor's also quite friendly with the players. I mean, he does the breakdowns after every final and something like that. Yeah, so, yeah, maybe the pot's getting called in the kettle black.
He is, but Razor's also got a temper. So, I mean, it's like anyone. When you push to the limit, you know, you think you know someone when everything is going well, when they have money and they got a beautiful wife and life is great. You know, go back and meet them. And so the story of Job in the Bible, you know, what if it's all taken away from you? How good are you then? Razor didn't have everything taken away from him, but he lost to Argentina at home. And that means that, and he's an old All Black. I mean, this is not some guy just hired in to be a coach and he was a decent player here and there. I mean, he was an All Black. He beat Felipe Contupomi with a last-minute try the last time they faced each other. And then to actually be the guy who has to, you know, go and shake the hand of Felipe and admit error and basically say, you beat us on our home patch. You know, that would have been a rough week in the All Black camp.
I don't understand how a head coach like Leon McDonald can take a position as an assistant coach, even if it's for the All Blacks or a national team. I mean, Scott Matthew just now won the MLR for 2 years in a row with New England Free Jacks. He's going to be the assistant coach now under Sean Everett at Edinburgh. It doesn't make sense to me. And I think doesn't that point towards where this actually comes from? Kind of, I was a head coach, now I'm not anymore, but I can't really adjust to it. Maybe that's part of it.
It hardly ever works. But there are some coaches who are made head coaches, and then in retrospect, because they're honest with themselves, because they're the kind of people who tell themselves the truth, realize that they're really an assistant. And those do work. But that has to be from your own self. You have to say, no, I'm not really a head coach. I'm excellent at, if you give me a portfolio and I can just run that line out, or I can be tackle man. When you are actual head coach and you then go try to work on it somewhere else, somebody got to go. It's like having two moms in the house. Not going to work.
I'm going to ask you something, I suppose, controversial maybe, but who's one of the best attack coaches in the world? Tony Brown, Is he safe here in South Africa? I'm a little concerned suddenly.
Yeah, but he's got a quirky personality. He's not we should step back and say, what is a head coach? Is someone who's like really comfortable being a tyrant, a benign monarch, but it's still like you have to actually say, my word is the final truth. And every single thing, I am the guy, I am the woman, the man that says what is final. And that's not for everyone. Tony might have been one of those people that looked himself in the mirror, took off his weird hat, put it back on, shuffled the remaining hairs on his head around and said, I'm going to work for the guy, the dude, the dispatch disco dancer. Rassie's very comfortable being the man. For him, the sun sets and rises on his arse. So life is good when you're Rassie because he can take the heat. Everyone thinks they want to take all the good stuff about being the boss and being the man, but do you want to have the rough stuff? Do you want to, you don't know how to make payroll, and you got workers waiting for you, and you're upside down and you can't pay anyone? I bet Rassie's the same guy either way. So, I think he can handle it. I think other people, almost more diligent, conscientious people who have shame and regret, they suffer when they're the CEO. They cannot handle that stuff because they feel too bad about everything. You got to have a certain shamelessness. You got to have a certain I will wake up in the morning and everything will be okay magically.
You don't think he might be tempted, Tony now, seeing that.
So being attack coach on the back-to-back world champion squad with a lot of players aging perfectly to be 33, 34 and have either 3 or 4 cup defense, and being number one in the world and working with an innovator who doesn't mind people being strange and weird. Is that better than being the head coach of, East Transylvania? Yeah, probably. So it's a ride, take the ride. Yeah.
Raise a scorecard on the first 2 games. What would you give him out of 10? We're going to compare all of them, your rating on all of them.
If we're just saying in the hallowed halls of all black land, a 3. Terrible. You cannot lose to Argentina at home. You can take all the millennial grade inflation out of this. You can, forget about soft and tender feelings. When Razor took the job and someone said to him, swear to me that you will never lose to Argentina on home turf, he would have said, yeah, you got that. I won't even lose to them if I'm the Crusaders. So why would I lose to them if I'm the All Blacks? It's, kind of good news, though, because in the end, maybe he got the worst stuff out of the way. Okay, there it is. It's interesting that Razor, though, didn't really do a wholesale change to begin with. So he has some plausible alibis here. He could say, well, I took the job. I didn't want to upset too much. We faced England, so I wanted to keep, some continuity. In my 10 certain players that I name, Razor would say 30% of them are from one sperm sample, Mr. Barrett. So, it's an interesting situation to be in when you just stick with, the same DNA. We talk about DNA in lots of teams, but like All Blacks, I got like DNA, right? It's just basically all cousins. I think he would look at it and say, I've got, I got some hookers, I got some props. I don't have any locks. I have an abundance of loosies. I'm trying to sort out who my 10 is. Obviously, Richie Mo'unga would solve that problem. I think Razor, in his heart of hearts, when he's saying goodbye to Leon McDonald, is saying he got a 3 out of 10. I'm not sure he wants to own the 3. Maybe he wants Leon to take some of that, but he's saying this isn't good. And something's not working. So that's why I give him a 3.
Just on that subject of not wanting to own it, it comes down to accountability. And that word is going to be used a little bit later in this video again. Just watch out for that. So he's now announced his squad. The big surprise is that Leon McDonald's not coming. And like Rian said, or Ringo said, listen, man, why are you not coming? The blackouts are done. There's no load shedding, nothing. Come over. So, but anyway, the point is, in terms of these players, next week you and I are going to do another one of those Harry's pet nicknames kind of a thing, so people get to know these players a bit better. His names are a bit strange to us, or unknown to us. We don't watch Super Rugby. We only watch proper rugby, URC and the like, or ERC. Tell us about the All Black squad in broad strokes, maybe, just before we go into detail next week.
Yeah, so if you look at Camp Rassie and you think Rassie probably knows at least 25, 26 of his certain players, and then he's like, toying around with that, who's the player 26 to 34 in a squad. All Blacks are actually really different. You can actually put your circle red pen around 10 of them and say, lock solid, all the way, Cody Taylor, Ethan de Groot, Tamati Williams, Fletcher Newell, Scott Barrett. You guys know these names. Artie Savea, TJ Perenara. You might look at Will Jordan as one of those guys, Bowden Barrett. Okay. When you start to go under that, it's actually the 2024 story about the All Blacks is all about that next group. Is it Fletcher Newell? Is it going to be Sam Darry? Is it going to be David Havili? Or is it going to be Rico Ioane still in 13 channel? Which wing is the real wing? There's just a lot of doubt. And this is the strangest thing of all, MB, is we have more 9s. We have more scrum halves than they do. They have an old TJ Perenara who looks like a Mossad sniper, except with a mullet. And then you have Cortez Ratima and Noah Hotham. Have you heard of those 2 guys? No, you haven't, because one's a chief and one's a crusader, and they don't even necessarily start in those clubs. So that's interesting. When did you last see an All Black team that didn't really know who the 9 and 10 properly was? That's different. And then, of course, they're in the era post Whitelock and Retallick. So, it's very interesting because it's some of the problems that face the All Blacks are the same problems we have, which is who's your third string hooker. But then you have extra problems, which is who's your first string locks, and do we really know who's supposed to play blindside? Is it Luke Jacobson? Is it Dalton Papali'i? Is it Todd Blackadder? It's not a certain response like you had with Jerome Kaino, or like right now where you have Peter Steph Toy, where it's just nailed on. You know what it is? You just put it in.
Well, you mentioned the name Tamati Williams there, and we talked about Tyrell Lomax a bit before. And the one thing that stood out from that is the fact that they're born and bred in Australia, or raised in Australia at least. Maybe not born, I'm not sure. The point is they're playing for the All Blacks and not for the Wallabies. And that's part of Joe Schmidt's problems. And we're going to talk about him a bit. But that goes to a bit more fundamental problem in Australian rugby, doesn't it?
Yeah, so Australia is having a hard time holding on to tight forwards. But then you look at tight forwards around the world that are doing well in different places, whether it's the All Blacks, with you say Tomato, I say Tamati Williams. And you wonder why, Emmanuel Miafu is starting for France. Will Skelton's tearing up trees at La Rochelle. You can actually look even underneath that and find a lot of people like Scott Seo doing really well at prop that don't even appear on the radar for Australia. And it's mostly because of the money. So there's just a tremendous delta between what these guys can make. And on the issue of New Zealand, why would they go to New Zealand where they wouldn't make that much more money? Sometimes it's cultural. Rugby is much more of an interwoven part of New Zealand life. It's a lot more like being in the Boerland. What are you going to do on Saturday morning? Where you're going, what you're doing. It's just it's woven in. In Australia, you could be a pretty good player and no one knows you. You can literally just walk down the street anywhere and no one's going to say, oh, look there, there's Archies Sneeman. Everyone's going to come, look. No, not in Australia. They wouldn't even know who you are. So I do think there's part of that. Plus there is there's not really an acceptance of big guy forward culture in Australia. It's almost like everything is focused on the backs or the loosies. There's not this adoration of the big fat guy who can scrum. Like not even talking about rugby, but just like that he's a cool guy in culture. There's something like not quite settling in Australia about being that guy. You want to have skinny jeans, you want to have that, little vest on, and you want to be, just kind of this hipster or something. And having a big meat-eating fellow is not really part of most, except for in Queensland. Sorry.
So talking about Joe now, in terms of his scorecard, what would you give him? And what do you think does he want out of this championship, the remainder of the championship? I mean, they're out of it. They lost against South Africa twice. I can't see them beating Argentina twice, in all honesty, and they're definitely going to lose against the All Blacks. So what would you want to take from this championship, looking ahead at the Lions next year, especially?
Yeah, so Joe, I'll give him a 5. So, it's like Razor's driving a Ferrari and Joe's driving a Yugo. So, I'm going to have to factor that in my weighting. I'll give Joe a 5. So you might say, well, that's pretty good because he got a hiding. But then you'd say, well, why only a 5? And I would say that because there was game plan deficiencies. You go in against the All Blacks, against the Springboks, and you know that there's certain things you have to deal with. And I felt like the Wallabies were naive. I felt like that came from the coaching box. Now that might be, and Joe might say in his very honest moments, might have said, no, Harry actually planned that. I know what you're saying, but I wanted to see how far behind we were. I wanted to benchmark myself and then give myself a proper grade. I did not throw the tests, but I wasn't concerned about, the win and loss. I was concerned about all the tiny battles. I wanted to rip apart and see who stood up, who didn't. So there's that. But I think that's the wrong way to go. In Test rugby, especially in Australia, where they're fighting for hearts and minds and souls and eyeballs, you need to make everything close. You've got to have drama. You got to have some suspense. You got to make that cake go up 12-11, and then you got to literally play the ugliest rugby in the world and try to keep it to 17, 16, 18, 19, and get lucky. You got to pull some shorts down. You got to twist something. You've got to play even more skellum because you have to get to the point where you're like in Wellington in 2011, where you steal the game, by superior tactics and better game planning by Robbie Deans. So I think Joe should have been more street savvy. So I'm going to give him a 5. What does he want? He wants an 8, a 7, 8. How do you get a 7 or 8? Beat the Pumas. You got to go to Argentina and win. No excuses. Pick your best team. Drill down on the things that work. If something's bad for you, make that not happen. If something's good for you, make more of that happen. It's like being a politician. You only answer the question that you wish they had asked. You'd never just play the game like they want you to play. So I think Joe Schmidt's got to get away from the Australian way and feel no pressure to whip the ball around and take it out wide when you don't have cleaners. I think it's got to be a grim affair. I think the Argentina's got terrible front row at scrums. I think the Wallabies want to go from not wanting scrums to wanting 20 scrums. And Angus Bell and Taniela Tupou and Alan Alatoa and those guys can absolutely out-scrum Argentina. I also think at line-out there's opportunities. I think Australia's got some good defensive line-out players. They can get up and they can steal the ball. They even put some pressure on the Springbok lineout, which is one of the best lineouts in the world. So a forward battle, this is very weird, but I think they can win that. I'm not sure they can play pell-mell with Chacobaras, Sinti, Carreras brothers, and Malia. They're just devastating on the counter. I would think the kicking battle will decide it, and Joe Schmidt will return wisely, because he's a wise guy. He'll return to his Irish Leinster roots, where Ireland played a very risk-adverse style while he was coach.
All right, and talking about Argentina, Felipe Contemponi, also a new coach, but at least an Argentinian coach. I think that's a good thing. And you mentioned the scrums now, and one of the standout things of that first match where they beat the All Blacks in New Zealand is the fact that the first scrum was in the 60th or 70th minute, something ridiculous. And the referee actually apologized for the replacements going off, that they never had the opportunity to scrum. I don't think we'll see that again. So what do you think Felipe Contemponi would rate as a as a coach. I mean, the second game was just horrendous. They just fell prey to their own old style thing, of getting emotional and letting the occasion overwhelm them.
Yeah, so I'm Argentina. My players mostly come from Buenos Aires, but currently they live in Marseille and in Dublin and in Edinburgh and in Tokyo and wherever around the world, somewhere in Italy somewhere. I only get them together for a camp a few weeks. First is probably just telling stories and having asado and chimichurri and around the braai, having a good time. And then I fly 44 hours through 5 airports. I rock up in the best rugby playing nation over the 140 years that rugby's been played in test matches, and I beat them. I give myself a 9.
Yeah, okay.
Felipe!
That's just the one game, bro. What about the second one?
I'm only grading Argentina on Argentinian standards here. And so when you go to New Zealand and you beat them in New Zealand with everything stacked against you, you don't even have, some of your best players, Emiliano Bofelli, the best, pressure wing kicker guy and going around, one of the world player of the year's candidates gone. You have zero, you have no props that can scrum. And you pull out a victory, which is not just about luck. They played away from their defects and they played toward their strengths. Then they were drunk and they lost the next game. I get that. But if you go and look at the whole history of Argentina and you say, okay, they played at these schools that were formed by British missionaries and English businessmen, and we had this kind of private school culture. We kind of rocked along, and Hugo Porta had a statue, and some South Africans came over and taught us to play some more rugby here and there. And then finally we get to the point where we're playing Super Rugby, and then we get kicked out. And I mean, when you look at that whole history, you say, what are the high points? But I think you look at that game, that win, and you say, that's my top 5, maybe it's semifinals and World Cup. Those are 2 moments. And then there's that, maybe the first time they won in New Zealand. And you know what's interesting? That's all recent stuff. I mean, if you take the whole history, it's like looking in the history of mankind, and you go, okay, so how long did we have cars? It's tiny. So it's very recent that Argentina can go to New Zealand and actually say, without everyone going and laughing at them, I think we can win tomorrow. So I think Felipe Contepomi has introduced the concept of, no, we really can. And so next year or next time they come there, 0 people in New Zealand will say, oh, this is easy. Yeah, we got this one in the bag. That's why I give him a good grade.
No, it makes sense. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I just saw his face in that second match in the box there, and I thought he really thought he could do it again. Honestly, that's what you could see it, but it was a bridge too far. Okay, so at last it's time to talk about what matters most to us, being South African, and that's the Springboks. The squad was announced this week. A lot of raised eyebrows, but you said something interesting to me the other day, and I wasn't sure what you meant, and I went and had to think about it, and that's the fact that the number 1 team beats the number 9 team, and then we start, squabbling about certain things, about tactics that haven't been employed and the likes. Talk to me about that a bit.
Guys, come on. We're in the castle. We have unlimited servants. The fires are burning. The big wild boars be on the spit. We're about to eat that shit. We got like 27 virgins running around, the finest in the land. And we just pillaged a village outside the moats, and we took their heads and put them on pikes in the walls, and we got all their best soldiers in our army now. Why are we arguing about motives, about scrums? It's like we just put 9 tries to 1 in Australia. Leave them alone. Walk away. And if someone talks about that, just smile. I mean, yeah, maybe not, probably, possibly. Who cares? If they were scared of scrumming with us, then that's good. I don't think it really helped anything, really. It made old Tony Brown's attack plays look more clear. Sometimes it's good to take something away from you. And then it's like Dricus du Plessis. You're trying to do a takedown. You're shooting on Izzy Adesanya. He sprawls and he sprawls and he sprawls. He puts your face into the mat. Your one superpower when you're Dricus, which is the ability to tackle anything, an innate Safa talent. I take it away from you. Now what do? You can't scrum, so I'm all. So what did Dricus do? He just started throwing. He just started throwing wild windmills like he was in a Boxburg bar on a Friday night, and sooner or later, Izzy started running away, and then he just jumped on his back, piggybacked him, took him out, and took away his air, and then cradled him like a baby and let him tap. So yeah, I think it's good for the Bucks to go into adaptability games and resist the stereotype of us against the world's against us. This is not fair. Just smile those away and don't encourage it. I think what happens is like Lua Diaka goes on and it gets gigged up a little bit by Skalki and John, and then it ends up being a quote that, right when a lot of people's second favorite team now is the Bucks becoming that way, like youngsters, like some kid in Sydney who's 16, they follow the winners. They're not going to support some, third-rate team. So they're going towards the Bucks, and the Bucks are cool guys. They're much better, they're cooler than like England or something. They have more swag than the All Blacks now. They have more diversity. They have more fun characters, and they're all nice guys. Like, it's not really a villain. Even the people who are supposed to be villains, like Eben Etzebeth, stopped being villains about 5 years ago. So I just think it's important not to fall into that trap of when you are the billionaire with the Lamborghini and you got a house jutting into the ocean in Malibu, don't pick a fight, with the guy on the street.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Makes a lot of sense to me. Talking about the Springbok squad now, and again, we talked about this player is the best in this position, and this player can do different positions, and he's versatile, everything else. But there's one thing that stood out, and I talked about this a bit, that Rassie looks for in a player to be selected as a Springbok more than anything else. Talk to me about that as well.
Yeah, so obviously there's measurables, and obviously there's athletic talent. I mean, I don't think that you're putting some of the players who are stalwarts in the Springbok team out there because of anything other than, first and foremost, supreme rugby ability. You can look at a guy like Jesse Creel, how he takes care of his body. You can look at Eben Etzebeth, even at 126 caps. There's a lot of the physical side of this. There's, elite athletic sports measurements. Justin Colby probably could win, side-to-side movement inside the old telephone booth. And still step you in a telephone booth. But I really think, having studied and obsessed probably on the Springbok era under Rassie, and I think it's immeasurables, unmeasurables. I think a lot of it comes down to character traits that he's looking to mix into this kind of steamy soup brew of no excuses. And, that leads us in business always to the idea, or even in friends and family, accountability. Like, you don't have to work so hard to get me to say I was wrong. You don't have to give your spleen to me before I'll say I messed up. I don't have to admit 17 errors, for me before you say, oh yeah, I really did stuff that up. Like, that was me. I didn't bring the right stuff to the braai. I backed the bucky over, the embankment, and now it's in the dam. I mean, you gotta say what you did. Pundits, people get way too excited about it. It's nothing compared to what's going on inside the Springbok camp. Did you see Chasing the Sun, where he comes in and says, "You lied"? Obviously no one was lying, right? But he elevated simple mistakes and a shrug about that mistake into a lie. Because what did he want? What is the opposite of a lie? Accountability. I did it. Dad, bad news. I burned the barn down. I'm not going to blame it on someone else. I'm not going to say it was a lightning strike. It was me. The lawnmower didn't break itself. I broke it. So we start out with that kind of old school, and you see it. You see it in Siya Kolisi's face. You see it from the captain. Then you see it from Andre Pollard, Eben Etzebeth, Peter Steph-Toy, the senior leadership. Then you come down to a guy like Bongi. Do you think Bongi would ever say he didn't mess up? Of course he would say it. Would he be hard on you when you messed up? Yes, it goes both ways. So I think he wants accountability. He wants adaptability. He wants the versatility that comes with adaptive brains. And he wants that kind of mindset. It's not about, I think you look better in a highlight. It's much more about how you handle the low light. And will you run away from the mistake? When we're watching film together, are you going to try and CYA? Or are you going to say, Coach, that was me. I did that. turn to your teammates and say, I was in the wrong place. I was in channel 2 instead of channel 1. And your missed tackle wasn't your fault. It was mine. Now we can fight about it. We can fight about whose fault it was. That's a good fight. Instead of saying, no, it was your fault. Say, no, it was mine. I take it. I think the more and more I look at this team, and I just sort of know, I know some of the guys. I don't know all the guys, but I know some of the guys, and I know them well enough to know that's the common element. It's not actually... it's not surprising that you have these people together in one group winning World Cups and possibly winning another one, because you just look across it, whether it's Ben Jason or Marco Siakolisi, Peter Steph, Eben. They're at different stages of their career, Malcolm Marks, but they have a quiet acceptance of their fallibility and their responsibility to their mates. And I think that team is tough to beat. Just like Drickus was out on his feet, he was tired. He just got face planted by Izzy on humiliating stuff of his takedown attempt. And it was 10 seconds later that he was just throwing. He was just throwing. He just wouldn't stop throwing his fists. And he put his hands on him, he got his hands on him. And then once he was on him, he was just finishing. He's a 1-point victory in the quarterfinal, semifinal, final. And maybe it's the way to go. It's not just luck. It's not that, Dana White said he fights like a white man dances. And it's funny to me. You can look at the Springbok team and say, but are they really better than all the other teams? Man for man? I don't know. But they have a really interesting way of holding each other accountable. And I love it. I literally love this team and how it works. And I think it's the kind of team that you can draw lessons from in your life.
I want to, on that subject, jump a little bit ahead. We're going to talk about other players and other aspects of team selection and the likes, but I want to talk to you about Johan Grobbelaar. And the reason I want to do that is there was a bit of a debate on Twitter between us and me and some of our followers, and even on our YouTube channel, about the fact that was Grobbelaar treated unfairly in the sense that it was a tough game, very, very tough conditions, like literally playing under a shower. Maybe not finding his jumpers that well. 9 lost lineouts, I think 5-1. I'm not sure about the exact stats. I can't remember them right now.
It was a lot.
The point is, we had like I think a 55% success rate in the lineouts, which is deplorable. If I can use that word. The point I'm trying to make is he was left out of the squad now, Grobbelaar specifically, and we're thin on hookers. We only have Markson and Bongi in the group. And we'll talk about the other options in terms of, being the third choice hooker just now. But Grobbelaar for me is a clear talent. He's a very talented player. He might not have had the best day in the office. Was it the right thing to do to leave him out of the group? Wasn't it maybe a better idea in terms of the whole, playing with people's minds, managing their mindsets and everything else, to keep him in the group, mentor him a little bit, making sure we've got a third proper hooker as a backup, than to leave him out of the group? What kind of a message does that send in terms of what you just, couch in terms of what you just said about what Rassie looks for in players?
Yeah, we never take pleasure in any player having a reverse step or having a disappointment in a career. I think that's true. I know you well enough by now that you're not behind the scenes. We're not looking for clickbait or scandalous, but we did say he would be dropped, and he was dropped. So on what we're trying to do, what our goal is, our role is here, is we got that right. So listen to us. That being said, you raise interesting points. I don't think in the moment a lineout coach would say, we lost so many lineouts, so Grobbelaar's out. They would have gone back to the tape. They would have seen every single lineout. They would have talked to the guys. They would have sat down with Ruan and said, what did you call? What did you hear? Whoever relayed the call to Grobbelaar, the prop, we would have talked about that. And then they would have done exactly what I did in those 2 lineouts that I posted on Twitter for a while, which is just show you, when people are lifting, how they lifted. So you got to trust this coaching group. They have some credibility. If they saw that Grobbelaar wasn't up to it, he wasn't up to it. Doesn't mean he's not going to ever be up to it. Malcolm Marks wasn't always a good lineout thrower, and then he became the best. So sometimes you take someone out of the heat because you know their personality. Sometimes you say, we don't even know this, although this has happened with other players. They've taken someone out formally, but they've worked with them informally. And so they'll send someone and go, okay, I'm going to teach you a few things on where your elbow is. Where your elbow ends on your throw is where the ball will go. Ernie Elstrick in golf, wherever you finish, your elbow's pointing, that's where the ball's going. Little things like that. But you don't want to do that against the All Blacks. And you may not want to do it in a camp as well, where you've just been highlighted as one of the reasons why we struggled, is maybe you take someone out of the heat. There's other players who you can put them in the heat. I was that kind of player. I want shout at me in front of everyone, challenge me. I'm probably going to fight you, but I'm going to stay in, and I want to do better. Other players, I think you almost need them to have a little bit of a sabbatical, go away, work on some fine-tuned skills, and then come back. So I'm going to trust this group until proven otherwise, that they know man management better than we do. They know their men, and they know what they need to be managed by. And I think, let's go back to the idea of accountability. Do we really know what happened? Do we know that if maybe they pointed out what happened and then Robillard might have said, but it was this guy, that guy, this guy? I can tell you right now, they're not sentimental. They would have said, no, we're not doing that. In our group, we don't do that. The guy wouldn't have known. Maybe under another coach, that's fine. Maybe, maybe in high school it was fine. But this group, you better quickly say, oh yeah, I see that, and explain why you did it. It's not just about taking accountability, but saying, and I know what I did, and I can show you. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and keep my faith until proven otherwise.
Yeah, no, Rassie's too much, too good of a man manager to just throw him to the wolves. I agree with you. There's probably something else going on beyond it. We don't have the inside information. I was just wanted to talk to you about that. It's, like I said, because it's topical at the moment. But now, let's talk about the other aspect that seems to be becoming more and more prevalent in terms of not just the Springboks, but most other teams, especially the All Blacks as well. The fact that they want to select versatile players that can play more than one position. And starting in the front row, for example, there's a lot of question marks being raised over there. We have one tight head prop who's also a swinger. We've got one loose head prop who's also a hooker. A lot of questions arising about that. You mentioned some other names in terms of locks and flanks and everything else. Talk to me about the versatility aspect of it, please.
Yeah, it is interesting, right? So now you have the rise. I think you're right about All Blacks being a team that forever and ever was known as that. I think during 2011, 2015, they had players that could play all the back three, but also in the centers. You had a floatability, and I don't think that gave you as much of a benefit as it does now even. But I think obviously Rassie and his guys said, I don't want to be like Heineken Meyer, where everyone's just got a specialist tool and they only do that one thing, and it's drawn up and it's like scripted. I want people who can play anywhere. Once upon a time, I actually met a guy in Colorado who said he was the world's foremost authority on black-footed ferrets. And he was going to introduce 10,000 of these ferrets into the prairie of northeastern Colorado to restore the triangular balance between prairie dogs, hawks, and ferrets. And like literally when he said, I am the foremost authority in that, I said, of course you are, because who else in the whole world would know about that particular thing? And he said, he invited me to the release, which was quite a sight, I got to tell you, releasing 10,000 ferrets into the prairie. But I thought, what a weird guy to spend 40 years, 35 years studying one thing. Gone are those days in rugby. Now rugby is all about people who can play like Kwagga Smith, people who can play like Dion Fourie. Dion Fourie was a hooker. No, he was a Lucy. No, he was a hooker. It didn't matter. But in the moment of truth, hey, guy, you're a hooker. Are you ready? So look at that. Look at vessels. Look at these strange characters running around, Are you a lock? Are you a hooker? Are you a prop? Look at the rise of a lock 7 and a lock 6. You never thought you'd see a lock open-sider, but you could. You could in Ruan Venter. You never thought that you would see so many people who have to be like Courtney Laws and Pieter-Steph du Toit or Scott Barrett, but now you see them all over the place. And you almost think that the teams that are the best have a player just like Pieter-Steph du Toit or trying to be, not as good as him, but they're trying to be like that way. Charles Olivon, Courtney Laws, Scooter Barrett. These are people who can make you big when you need to be big, can make you taller at the line out. They can still get to the rucks and they can still carry. I think what's happening with Rassie and his guys, and maybe that's why he brought in Tony Brown, the ultimate versatilityist, is he only wants players. Like he wants Faf to be like a flank. He wants Grant to be a wing. He wants everyone to do these things, and there's only a few people that are allowed to be like true specialists. Andre, probably Villy, to some extent. You could look at a tight head prop like that, okay? But beyond that, I think he's looking at people who can do lots of things, and that resonates with me. People have reached out on our socials and talked about who's Harry, what does he do? I mean, as you know, MV, I'm a fixer, and I get stuff done. I have a friend who's named Fricky, but we'll call him Freaky because he's very freaky. He moved to Canada and became a gold mine operator, owner, because that's what Saffers do when they leave. They just find mines and dig in the dirt. Something about South Africans want to be under the ground, digging with sand in their fingernails. So he had a gold mine in Central America that went wrong. And who did he send? He sent an adaptive utility player like me. I land on the ground in Tegucigalpa. I go up into a cloud forest. I don't know what I'm going to find, but I buy an axe at the nearest hardware store. And I go up in there, and in the next 5 days, I'm dealing with cartels and mayors and models and musicians and people chanting about a pilgrim and putting a mine on strike. I'm finding a guy, who doesn't want to be found, and I sort it. You just send me in there, and I'll come back with a gold mine solved. If you had to get all the people that you were supposed to get for that mission, you'd have 17 people on the payroll. I don't think Rassie wants 17 hookers. I think he wants a guy that can put a hooker and can be Dion Fourie. I think his favorite players are players like that. I think putting Lacanio Arm at 12 was an example of that. Didn't work so well. Whatever. He goes on. Kwacha starting at 8. Let's see. Nah, didn't work. Move on. I don't think Rassie is going to stop. I don't think he's even close to where he wants to be in his desire for utter world domination of rugby. And I think he thinks that it's going to be when he has people who can take an axe to a gold mine and come out with the money instead of sending, this engineer and that engineer and this diplomat and this negotiator. So I look across this team and all I see is people like that. Ben Jason Dixon, Peter Steph Toy. You can throw them anywhere. I suppose the exceptions are more remarkable now. I think Jasper Visa would be one. Is he adaptable enough? But maybe when you have all these adaptation, versatility guys, you do need a black-footed ferret expert. And so you just go, okay, hey, Jasper, you really have one job.
Yeah. Well, something I picked up when you were talking about that's the fact is that's what you described there. You going down into South America to sort out a gold mine, and versatile players being asked to do anything and doing the hard work and sort of knuckling down and making a plan. That seems to be a bit of a South African trait, don't you think?
It is, because we're always working, and I say in present, it's past. I mean, obviously growing up in South Africa and doing a lot of my work and probably learning everything that I rely on in South Africa is you don't have the proper stuff. Like what's it? 3 nights in bush school, in boarding school. I got to survive on myself, orienteer, compass, but nothing's working right. It's just like in the middle of Africa, and everything just always breaks down. And I think the lack of excuses in that kind of lifestyle, not needing the exact right things, being able to just stick some meat under your horse saddle and the sweat of the horse makes biltong, and you go, hey, what is this? Let's eat that. That. I think that is a trait. Only certain pilots could land aircraft in Baghdad for years and years after the Iraq War. They were all South African. They were that crazy. Who do you send to go unlock a gold mine that's not producing the typical, millions per week? You send a guy who just doesn't really care, and will find a way. So I think requiring too much is the downside of the generational player, right, that we're having right now. I want to have perfect everything. I want to have the perfect gym. I want to have my social media just right. I want my kit to be good. I want the physio to be hot. I want the buffet table. I think there's still this kind of like low maintenance in the guys that end up playing all around the world and become those clubs' favorites. They don't Hanner Liebenberg for Leicester. I don't know if he's ever going to be a Bok. Probably not. But he's like revered. Ruan Pinar went to Ulster, and I think right now he could go to Ulster, to Belfast, and like they would hand him the keys to the town because he could play 15, he could play 10, he could play 9, he could play anything. He could probably pack down on a scrum if he had to. So, yeah, I wonder about where it goes from here. So I've actually wondered about whether the Springbok coaches do circle a few positions and they say, okay, let's hang the whole thing around the skeleton, and these people have to be specialists. But then on everything else, we want to more and more move into anyone can play anywhere on the field.
I just want to say one thing that maybe didn't come out as well as it should, is the fact that you are actually you were born and bred in South Africa. You grew up in South Africa. You grew up in Cape Town. You were a province supporter. You just happen to live in America at the moment. Am I right?
Yeah, it's funny because people have sort of quizzical things about accents and the purity of accents. American parentage. My dad's a nuclear engineer, scientist, and I spent the first part of my life in South Africa and played rugby in the Western Cape all over the place. Was able to play representative rugby at the age group, and then have been able to play rugby in different places like France, Argentina, Uruguay, and then a lot in America. But also I help clubs. I'm working with a team in Monterrey, Mexico, to become part of the MLR. I've never really thought of rugby. Rugby to me has been the ultimate global sport in that you can rock up in a little clubhouse in Montevideo at rugby, and if you're just rugby guys, you're already speaking the same language. Everything's going to actually be very similar. Tbilisi, Georgia. What if you find yourself somewhere in Russia and you're playing a rugby club? It's going to be so similar. But I think South Africa is one of the three cornerstones of world rugby. It is one of the three stools upon which rugby sits. And if ever there was a thought experiment and you said, I'll subtract South Africa and South Africanness from rugby, what a poorer sport it would be. What things we bring, this complete ruthlessness in some ways, like a scoffing at style, and just being really fixated on what works. I love that. I think there's an awful and terrible beauty in South African rugby when it focuses on the physicality of defense, only leaking 1 try in 2 matches and fixating on that, and everyone else talking about scoring 10 tries and 20 line breaks. I love the idea of saying, if you ever scored a try against the Springboks, hell, against any South African team that's proper, if you scored a try against us, you're going to hurt tomorrow. Like you will know that you went through a war to get through me. I will add an inch. I will add a leg. I will add an arm. I'll be as dirty as the ref will allow, or maybe not so much, and I'll just make it difficult. And even if you do beat me, I want you to be miserable doing it. But then 1 second after the whistle, we're good. We're good. I'm going to hug you. We're going to have fun, and then we're going to exult and have celebrate in it. Just like I saw Drickus and Izzy post fight. The guys were brothers in arms. And everyone who plays rugby against South Africa has always said the same thing, which is, it's almost like playing against the Pacific Islanders, just horrible bastards on the field. And the minute after, it's songs, it's prayers, it's braai, it's beer. And no, I'm looking forward to this. All Blacks are really looking forward to this as well. New Zealand is looking forward to these matches coming up. It doesn't matter that it's in the Rugby Championship. Yes, it's cool that we could get one over them and win something. But in reality, it wouldn't matter. You take away all the Rugby Championship log points. Would you care? I wouldn't care. It's just like the Irish tests. They were full money.
Interesting thing, a lot of these All Blacks coming to South Africa would be the first time coming to South Africa. And it's sort of a pilgrimage, like you just said, for them to come play rugby here. I mean, that's going to have an effect on them, don't you think?
Yeah, their misty legends and their legends and lore all revolve around going to the Republic. As they've said a lot in this last week. Yeah, it's good to have the Irish yapping and with their little sledges and stuff, but it's not the same as going to the Republic. It's not, you make your name, you make your reputation as an All Black by going to South Africa. it was deep into the 90s before, there was ever sort of an edge there. The All Blacks kind of went ahead. But up until that time, it was just 50-50. It was the unofficial World Championships. It took them ages to win a series in South Africa. And it was brutal. And so I think that's the mists in which their fathers and grandfathers were born and told them about rugby. They had to get up at ungodly hours to hear it and then see it and then relive it. You're not a proper All Black until you've gone to South Africa and been in a proper test match at Ellis Park. And I think maybe it's even definitional for them, and you have to win. I mean, so you can win a test at Ellis Park against a proper Springbok team. You're an All Black. Welcome to that smaller little fraternity, because it's not a big fraternity. There's no other teams that really can get in that fraternity. It's just All Blacks and maybe a couple of Frenchmen and Englishmen.
I'm literally getting goosebumps as you talk about All Blacks in Ellis Park and the Springboks and everything in one breath, and I think I'm going to be there, Oh man, I can't wait for that. Anyway, let's talk about the squad. We talked about a couple of questions marks about Grobler, for example, and I'm a little bit concerned about how thin we are on hooker. It's only got Marx and Bongi there. We know what happened in the World Cup. Marx got injured, Bongi got injured in the first minute, so we had to rely on the retreaded Dion Fourie and Marco van Staden. Maybe. Do you think it's a mistake that maybe they should have then maybe called in another hooker or something? Is that a problem there? Or maybe Wessels will cover that?
We have to go back to, axes in Honduras and black-footed ferrets and accountability and versatility, because I think it's clear by using Dion Fourie in the way they did in the World Cup final when everything was on the line that they don't rate hooker as one of those incredibly super specialist positions upon which you have to hang your selection criteria. And I'll say why is because there's not that many scrums in a game. We might want to have 15, 16, or like back in the day, even in the 90s, there were 20. And then it came down to 15, 10, and now it's down to sometimes 6, 7, 8. That's not enough times on scrummage ability. You can feed the ball behind your hooker's foot anyway, so you're just walking over it. You can take a Wessels and make him into a hooker, and he'll be a better scrum hooker than Dion Fourie was. So you're finding the set piece. Now you got to go to the line out. There's no law that says that the hooker has to throw in, but that's what happens. So now it's just a matter of, are you a good golfer? Can you replicate? Can you wad up a piece of paper right now in your office and make it in the bin? Can you throw it in the rubbish bin a lot? I love doing that kind of stuff. It dictates how my day is going to go. And then can you bounce it off here? Can you bounce it? Are you that kind of guy? Can you take a tennis ball and just do something? Can you throw it up in the dark when you're in bed and catch it? I don't know. Probably they see something in Wessels. I'm gonna again defer to the wisdom and the behind the scenes because it's worked. But I'm telling you, hooker is one where whether it's Bongi or Marx, they see very different guys there. There's not a unanimity in hooker. So they might just say, and so what if we had, Wessels, who's good over the ball, he's quick, and he can do the technical aspects of a scrum. Can we make him throw well? Probably. So if you go beyond that, maybe they're just thinking of tests, so Grobler is going to go back and work on some stuff. You have Akker that's in the landscape, and you have Venter. I think that's enough to try, but whoever it is, they're probably going to want to see more of them in 2025 than they are this year. I think this year there's some scores to settle, and now that things have gone the way they've gone, they want to go ahead and win the rugby championship.
On props, Kitshoff made his comeback past weekend, playing against the Lions in a Currie Cup game. He did not seem to be at his sharpest. I mean, he's clearly been out for a while now. Slotting straight back into the Springbok squad, do you think he's now behind Ox, for that matter?
I think he might be behind Ox, but he's definitely ahead of everyone else. So I think there's kind of theory of height. So you had Kitsy, Marx, and France that were sort of the tall front row, and then you had Ox, Bongi, and Trevor, who's now too old and maybe phased out, and Koch, who's pretty tall, but still he's a short arm guy. So you have that kind of long, short front row. And now they seem to think of different things. And it might be that the Ox-France duo with Bongi in the middle actually poses more problems for people at scrum time. I don't know, but the All Blacks is a really good test, because one thing that they do have is two really good front rows. I mean, they have proper front rows. And in the World Cup final, no one gave an inch. Those front rows just stuck like concrete. So this is a really good test for a guy like Kitsoff to come back to, whether he's scrumming against Fletcher Newell or Tyrrell Lomax. It'll be proper. Kits has always done well at test level. He's usually played better for the Boks than he has for his club teams. He just is one of those guys. He's inspired. He's super accountable. He's got a great personality traits. He has 83 tests. He's got IP. He knows what to do in a ruck. He knows how to counter ruck. He's a good carrier. He's a reliable carrier, and he's really good in the red zone. He has just a good knack of getting over the gain line and presenting really dynamically with that extra shove and that shrug. You know, he doesn't get snaffled. And by the way, Kitsoff can get over the ball himself. So I see him as a viable candidate to go right back in. I don't think they care. I think, does anyone really think that Bongi is clearly better than Malcolm Marx? I don't think any of those guys think that. I think they just have 6 players there: Ox, Malcolm, France, Stephen, Bongi, and Vince, that they're interchangeable. It doesn't matter. They scrum against each other, and it's parity. And so now we're just trying to find, is it Steenekamp? Is it Tank? Tank is sort of has taken over from Trevor as the swing prop. And then, what is Vessels? What is he? I love the guy's name, Vessels, because it's like, what kind of vessel are you? And I think they're going to find out. And I think they'll take the opportunity against the All Blacks to do something along the lines of 7-1. So when you have 7-1, then, it also changes what kind of forwards you want on the pack, and you want versatility at all times.
Talking about versatility, the one thing that really raised a couple of eyebrows here was Nico Janse van Rensburg, all the way from Montpellier. Why would he go pick a lock like that? I know versatile and accountability and everything else, but this is a left field choice. I know he played for the Boks once before 2 years ago. Why not pick someone like Ruben van Heerden? You mentioned him before as a probable candidate or possible candidate. Why did he go for someone like this?
You want a cool conspiracy theory that is based on, things that I pulled out of my arse? I think this is a Jacques Nienaber pick, and it's my single best evidence that Jacques Nienaber is still working with the Springbok camp.
Wow, okay.
Nienaber loves Nico. He was an original Nienaber pick. He only got one test, I think, maybe. He plays mostly big six, R7. But he calls the lineouts. So in the French system, the flanks are the lineout jumpers, and their locks are all too fat. Willemse went over to France and became, this 150 kilogram lock. So there's no way to lift him. So they lift guys like Nico. Nico's called the lineout in Montpellier. Apparently, Montpellier's lineout stats are the only thing that was superlative. They've struggled on everything else. And so they look at Nico as kind of a Jeff Parling, poor man's Victor kind of wannabe kind of guy, a guy who knows lineouts inside and out. But as our friend Jared Wright has pointed out, his work rate is also through the roof. And so that's Jacques Nienaber battle stat. So you have a lineout impeccability, and then you have the hard worker at the rucks with good height. And it's a very physical league, top 14. So if you can stay healthy and you can play a lot, and you are, the ruck monkey in the top 14, that's the durability issue that they're struggling with as well. With Salman Murat proving to be a little bit fragile, with Arghib having his just annoying habit of picking up this injury and that injury, I think they're also looking, and maybe it's a cousin of accountability and durability is durability, like just being accountable with your nutrition, being accountable with your gym habits, being accountable about how you feel, your sleep. I don't know. I don't know what makes some people more rugged than others and can just sort of take a hit and keep going. But they do like that about Nico, that he he stays healthy, stays busy, and his lineouts are clean.
So do you think maybe we'll see him at 5?
Yeah, he
Maybe
would call a line out, but you can call a line from any position, right? So the interesting issues here are, do we start out with the bench and work forward? Like if we're going to go 7-1, which has worked against the All Blacks, although sometimes with by the skin of my underpants, do I start out with 7-1 and then I work forward and say, so that means I want to have Pieter-Steph as a lock, or I want to have Pieter-Steph on the side? And then I work like backward. Do I want to have Pieter-Steph and Ben Jason on the field at the same time, which looked really good at the end of the match, but not so much at the beginning? I think so. That will dictate on where Nico is. You can never ever play rugby at test level without a really good lineout functioning against a good team. Australia couldn't make us pay, but if you lose that many lineouts against the All Blacks, you're going to pay, because you're going to have Will Jordan steaming down the tram, and it's good night. So I think you have to have a solid lineout. Under that theory, because Eben doesn't call lineouts, you would have to have maybe a Nico, or you could go back to Ruan and say, hey, do you want to grow some hair in your chest as well as your face? Let's go. All Black time. That's big. I'm excited for him. I think Ruan does seem to have that kind of spirit. I think he has the geest to go in and do it and not fold. But I do think it's a big ask, because what if it starts to go wrong? I think one reason for Nico is if it goes wrong, it goes sideways. He has played in huge matches in front of huge stadiums, full, and the French are brutal on opposing players and even their own players. So maybe they also see maturity. Plus, he has some really beautiful sideburns. Just adding that.
Yeah, Ruan's not in the group at the moment, but he's definitely part of the long-term planning. He's one of those ones you and I had a discussion about. A 6 flanker maybe playing lock as well, not necessarily a 7-1. That's a bit of a new dimension, isn't it?
Yeah, he played lock coming up, and I think actually started out more as a lock and then was able to develop on the ball. And he's kind of a weird size for that. More like a Francois Lowe, a big open sider. There's probably like 13 players that are there or thereabouts in a wider group. I mean, you can think about guys like Edville. You can think about guys like Ivan Ruiz. They're not out of the picture at all. There's even the world's most unlucky man. I think Jean-Luc Dupree. He just always is circling around on the peripheral. And what's interesting about all the players that I just named and I thought about is they can play more than one position. I mean, even Ruiz can do that. Speaking of a guy who could play open sider, it would take a lot to convince Ruiz to do that, but he could. He absolutely could. He has a body shape that is not restricted to 8. I just think look at a guy like Moody coming back in. Moody's a guy that we don't really know yet what his best position is, and the Buck coaches would say you don't have to know what your one position is. Look at Frans Steyn. You can just be a rugby player who floats through the careers. I mean, like all of us start out at a certain position and we end up as a prop if you live long enough. But no, I think it's interesting. Even a guy like Fassi is, where does he fit? I think one rule of thumb here is you want to have more caps than your age. So you look across the team and you see the people who have caps that are at their age or above, and you think, okay, they're in. And then you have the ones that are still catching up. I think they're going to have to, by next year, decide who to put those 20 caps in, those 30 caps in, so that when Australia rolls around in 2027, you got a 26-year-old, 27-year-old guy with 35 caps. You like Marco van Staden, you can tell they're trying to put some more caps in that guy. 21 caps now, looking good. Interesting enough, people talk about Monty Lubbock and they get all emotional about it, and they assign him the same kind of incumbency preferences that a guy like Andre Pollard has. I mean, Pollard has 73 caps. Monty has 10 more caps than Sasha. So let's all calm down a little bit on that. It's clear that Sasha is the better long-term prospect. He's got more tools in his arsenal. He's 22 years old, and you just gave him the ship to run, and one game was really good, one game was kind of so-so. But you can see that that's a kind of guy that could do what Pollard does and what Monty does. I like that versatility.
Yeah.
And he's accountable, by the way. Sasha was very accountable. He gets called over to do an interview on Stan Sports, and it's obviously just because they wanted to pair him and Sonny Bill Williams. And Sasha said, "Who, me? Why?" I mean, that's great. In the moment, he was humble, and he realized that it was a joke.
I had an interesting conversation with somebody who works for a very well-known South African rugby magazine. It's wink, wink. And Sasha messaged him and asked him if they had nice photos and stuff of the game. And he sent it over to them and he said, "Thank you very much." And then the next game, that was the first test. Next game, he asked him the same question. And the guy sent him the same nice pictures of the second test. And he said to me, "It would have been a nice test if you managed to catch that pass that Cheslin basically put in your hands." And he said, "Yeah, I know, I stuffed up there." Exactly what you said. Took accountability.
Yeah.
He could have taken offense to it. He could have said, "Yeah, but I this or that, and the ball was wet," whatever. He just said, "Yeah, I stuffed it up." Interesting look into the personality there.
Yeah, and when you see, go back in time, and I think it was 13 years old at Bishops, he's giving a speech, it was at the end of the season, I think. His speech had nothing about him. A 13-year-old boy is classically narcissistic. And he was just talking about everyone else. I thought that was great. And either it's a pose, well, so what? It's well done. Maybe he's reading the room. But I tend to think it's more about these character traits that I think are real. So I think culture is real, and I think a culture can be honed. It can be you can work on culture, but it still comes from somewhere. And I think there is an abiding trait within South Africa and South African sports, which is to overperform, to do better than you were supposed to do without the creature comforts. Yes, sometimes a guy like Ernie Els goes to America and gets into a lab and he learns all this stuff, but it comes down to his timing. It's just being okay, It's being okay with yourself and being good in your own skin. So I think that's what Rassie's looking for. I think for all of his obvious traits and the winning the genetic lottery, Sasha is a good sort. He's a good fellow. I don't think he's a guy that's looking to be bigger than the team. And one thing is for sure, Rassie's not going to allow any player to be bigger than the team. There's a couple of guys that you would think would have that carte blanche, like a Dwayne, like an Eben, like a Sia. But you saw in that wonderful episode in Chasing the Sun 2, we literally just put those three guys into a vice, sort it out and make sure that you come out of the room putting team ahead. Team is king.
I want to talk to you about the returnees. Quite a few of them, some from red cards, extended suspensions like Jasper Wiese, and then Esterhuizen, and then Moody and Jaden Hendrickse. So let's talk about the red cards guys first. Jasper Wiese, it seems like he was out forever. He's now back. Do you think he'll waltz into the starting lineup, or you said he might be the one specialist they want in the team, that kind of a bollocking, stands back for nothing kind of a player, or maybe Ulrich, did enough to claim that spot for himself? Your thoughts on that?
Oh, that's fascinating, isn't it? Well, he won't waltz into the team because he doesn't waltz anywhere. He'll crawl, all fours,
barge into it. That's what he.
I can imagine Jasper just, on weekends when no one's around, he just runs around on all fours because he's that kind of guy. He tries to stay low. So there would be a good mix, the recipe of proper grievance. I think Jasper knows he was badly treated by that disciplinary process. So he's looked around the world and seen other people do much worse things and get shorter bans. So if that was a fire you need, he's got that fire. I think it's more about technicalities. I think that sometimes in not having someone around, you see how much you miss them. And so Jasper would have gained a little bit of credit from what he could have brought against Caelan Doris and the Irish, and you would also think that up against the All Blacks, the very last act of the game where we beat the All Blacks and won the cup, took it home again, and make them whine and cry for 4 years, was Jasper Wiese. He had so much to do on that final play, picking up from a retreating scrum, taking it into a crowd, and not being stripped or turned over or choked or pushed into touch, being able to get down with enough force. I just think there's things like that where you say, if that was the last thing you did for us against this particular opponent, I'm going to make you go and do it again. I hope that's what happens. I think on Ellis Park field, I think Visa's a nightmare to tackle. And I think that is one area where the All Blacks have shown some fragility is this year, at least, is in stopping someone coming just around the corner, again and again and again, that guy. And Jasper's always ready. He's always loaded. He's always got, a lot of gauge in the shotgun. I don't think Elrich Lowe will get some time. So if you go 7-1, then Elrich Lowe is almost the perfect guy at 7-1 because he can fit into lock, or he can go. You can put Ben Jason and Elrich on the bench on a 7-1, and you're kind of set. It makes everything else easier on your other selections. If it's 6-2, then maybe one of those guys in one, maybe one's not. Andre is probably the one where you lose something by being out, and by that I mean it just looked beautiful. The midfield has never looked better when it was Dialende and Creel playing, just playing magic rugby against the Irish. And then for that first part against the Wallabies, the Lucanio arm experiment didn't work so well because he went crash ball when he should have passed, and he passed when he should have gone crash ball. Andre is bad at contact. He's just bad. If you go back and you actually look at every single thing that Andre ever did as a Springbok, and you put percentages on it in the 18 tests that he's had, he loses the ball a lot. I don't know what it is. I think he tries to do too much. I think he overestimates how much time he has. I think he's used to being bigger, stronger than the other players, and at test rugby you're not. And so it backfires on you. Jordy Barrett's going to be taller than him if he's going 12-12. Rico Ioane's quicker than him, and Bundyaki is stronger in contact. So there's all these things at test rugby that you get found out. I think Andre is a great player. He's one of the Harlequins' best players, and will probably be a Harlequins Hall of Famer. But I don't think he's a proper Bok 12. So I think you stick with the greatest midfield combination. Let's just go ahead and say it and admit it. The greatest midfield combination is, strangely enough, who saw that coming? Damien and Jesse, both players who have been maligned for a long, long time, because we like to think of the highlights of Jean de Villiers and Jacques Ferry, Donny Gebre, but we don't want to think about consistency, physicality, and rush D. What a rush D demands of you, like this reverse umbrella rush D that Boks do is like, defense on steroids. Is the sorry, that's not a steroid comment about Jesse. I'm just saying it's like you're on cocaine. So he's clean. But I don't think we can even fathom how good that midfield is. And so I think this is the perfect combination to go up against the All Blacks, who are probably going to throw Jordy Barrett and Rico Ioane, or possibly David Havili, a Crusader back that Razor likes.
And Jordan Hendriksen, I see the thinking behind him is that he's such a clever player. I saw a clip somewhere that the opposing player was trying to roll out of the maul or something, and he went and fell on him and rolled with him, so that it looked like the guy was interfering with him, playing with the ref's mind. That kind of a clever player, more than a fantastic player, if I can put it like that.
Yeah, Jaden. Jaden is he's always clever. He's a clever 9. He's a big 9 too. He reminds me a little bit of Ruan Pinar, in that sometimes he can be kind of quiet and people don't see how good he can actually go either direction really well. He's good. He's a good kicker. He can see the field really well because he's got that, US Pinar kind of height. Thinking guy. He looks like he's playing slow, but he's not. I like him. To me, he's always been the one that I wanted to take over when Faf started to wane. And then we went a different way. We went with like the super speed, Kobus, Williams. Even when you look behind those players, you see some really speed athletes. I don't think Jaden's going to run away from you, but he's not slow, and he can defend well around the ruck. He's a bit like Connor Murray, just a guy that can see the field really well and kind of pops up in the right spots. I'm very interested to see if he gets a go, because I do think that against the All Blacks, it's not always the same players that do well against the All Blacks at 9 than the ones who do well against, say, the Irish team. TJ Perenara is a nuisance and you wear him. He's a coat. He's a cloak. If you're playing against TJ, you are literally just having that guy on you all the time. I like Jaden's size on that one. I like that he probably doesn't get phased very easily. And I think he would look at TJ Perinar as if he was a madman and probably say something about it.
I like that. And lastly, let's talk about Moody. The Bulls, after he's come back now from that finger injury, they've used him at fullback and wing. But he's also played center before. I don't think that's his position. But like you asked, where would he fit in? Do you think that maybe was a call from up above to see, let's try him here, try him there, to test, what he does in different positions?
Oh, Moody's such an interesting guy, right? So New Zealand fans love him. I like to look at what New Zealand thinks about rugby. I like to read Irish commentators and talk to my Irish friends in rugby and see how they see Springbok land. And I love to hear from the All Blacks. And there are a few players that for the All Black fans, they like literally say this in quiet moments, non-public. I would love him to be an All Black. He would walk right in, right? Malcolm Marx and Kane and Moody keeps coming up. They love that guy. And even Etzebeth, obviously. So Moody has this weird combination of height and speed and hands and unflappability, but it's too much. It's too much to throw him in against the All Blacks at 13, I think. So that's a no-go. I think in wing is always the spot where if you have a player that doesn't have the full-rounded knowledge of the game yet, is where you put a rugby player. You just do, because you have touchline's your friend. You touch the ball the least, and to some extent, your athletic superiority can take over without it being technical. So Moody just has some things I'd like to see. At 21 years old, 10 tests, it'd be very interesting to see him up against the likes of Will Jordan, if that's the side he plays. Actually, he might be against Caleb Clark, but it'd be a really fascinating contest to see his physicality, and I think he could beat those guys one-on-one. I'm worried about them beating him one-on-one.
Yeah. I don't know, he seems to have lost a bit of speed for me. Remember that, I don't know if you saw that game, one of the last games in the UFC, where Rassie overhauled him from behind.
Rassie could overhaul anybody.
True,
I don't know who's quicker than Rassie. I just don't know. I haven't seen that guy on the rugby field.
All right, I think we've covered most of it. Thanks, man. That is a long and interesting discussion, as usual.
You're all fired up now, too.
I am. Next time we'll talk about, like I said, the pet names. We'll also have a look at what we think the Springbok squad's going to be, or team is going to look like. This episode will be published on Monday, the next one, and then the team will be announced on Tuesday. So we'll give a bit of what our thinking is beyond what we think the team should be looking like. Thanks, Harry. Appreciate it.
We always right.
Yeah, of course. It goes without saying.
This is the Lekker Rugby Pod with Harry Jones and Welman.